Thanks for staying with Morning Live. Now, ministers of environment from African countries have agreed to speak with one voice at the COP27 meeting in Sharm El Sheikh in Egypt. The ministers met on the sidelines of the conference. We're going to cross now to our SABC News International news editor, Sophie Mokoena, for more in what is happening there in the Egyptian resort. Sophie, good morning. Of course, lots of attention on what's happening in Egypt, and particularly with climate change and how it will affect us, the ESCOM question and all of that. It's over to you.
Well, indeed, Sakina, quite a number of issues high on the agenda of the summit here. Yesterday, you pointed out that the African ministers of environment, some of them also involved in economy and also in the green energy, met to map a way forward in terms of the position of Africa. You know that there are concerns that developing countries are not willing to help the developed countries are not willing to help the developing countries. The developed countries, we talk about the G7 included, is some members or are some members of the G20 group. We know that they have agreed finally to have the issue of loss and damages on the agenda, but they are still non-committal in terms of whether they will agree to setting aside or making a commitment in terms of funding loss and damages. We know that Minister of Environment in South Africa, Barbara Creecy, yesterday when she spoke to SABC, she pointed out that for these countries to be respected and also to ensure that there's trust between developed and developing countries, they will have to first implement the commitments they made in Paris, and also in terms of the Glasgow, but also raising a concern that the current funds that are made available, particularly by some G7 countries and also international financial institutions such as IMF and the World Bank. I'm talking about the 8.5 billion that was spoken about for quite a number of months now in terms of South Africa, is that 95% of that money, it is loan, and also you have a situation where now South Africa is calling for grants to be increased. In other words, that money should be mainly grants, not loans.
Now, Sophie, of course, again, South Africa and what is going to happen to us also very key for those of us sitting, watching with the energy situation, the blackouts that we are suffering, but of course that loan, and again the breakdown of that loan. What some of the analysts have been saying is part of the difficulty with that loan is that as South Africans we don't even know what the conditions are attached to that loan. Any sort of discussions around that or any clarity that we may have gleaned?
The minister told me that relevant departments like your finance, your minerals and energy, your environment, they are having discussions in terms of what needs to be done. You know that President Ramaphosa did appoint a team that is really looking at that issue in terms of South Africa moving to renewables. But you find a situation, people with business minds and also finances are eager to get that money, but you have departments such as minerals and energy under Kwete Mantashe warning that if you roughly handle the issue of renewables or you implement vigorously, you are likely to see a bloodbath in terms of job losses in the mining sector. And mining towns, particularly in provinces such as Limpopo, Mpumalanga, you will see a situation where those towns are going to be ghost towns. South Africa is currently experiencing a challenge of unemployment, particularly young people. And therefore, if you do this without thinking about the consequences, you are likely to see a serious challenge. And it will lead to restlessness. We know that other countries, as we speak, there are social unrest because the communities and also the citizens of those countries are not happy. And therefore, South Africa has to move very cautiously in terms of how they handle that issue of renewable energy and the implementation thereof. But of course, the Treasury would want that money so that they can resolve issues such as challenges at Eskom. But you have to strike a balance. Later in the day at around 1, I'll be able to speak to the negotiator, the head of the negotiating team of South Africa during lunchtime to get a sense of where the talks are. But also I'll try to get the person who's leading the team of envoys of South Africa appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, and of course other stakeholders. In the evening, the minister will be launching the South African pavilion where you'll have business and all stakeholders. We will again try and speak to them, but not only South Africans. This is a UN conference. We'll try to get the views from other countries. Because what I have picked up, Sakina, the issue of just energy transition, a phrase coined by South Africa, you still have to explain to some of the countries on the continent, because they are saying you cannot have a uniform blanket approach in terms of just energy transition, because countries are not developed in the same way and are not developing in the same speed. Others are very, very indebted with loans from IMF and World Bank.
Well, Sophie, thank you so much, and looking forward to those answers to the questions that you will be putting to them, and also some more information on what's happening at COP27. And that is our SABC international editor, Sophie Mokoena, speaking to us there from Egypt. And she's, of course, also there trying to gather for us what's happening, not just at the main events, but on the sidelines as well.